This podcast may contain explicit language. I don't know who you are or what you're doing here, but I will not tolerate rudeness in the presence of a star. Nashville, next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
And tonight we are talking about Nashville. This is our second of four major Best Picture nominees from 1975 that we'll be discussing this year for the 50th anniversary. We previously discussed Barry Lyndon going back to January, so you can go back and catch that there. But tonight we have our second of the two in Nashville by Robert Altman. But before we get into the rest of the movie, we obviously can't do this alone. We also welcome in our returning celebrity guest, a film commentator and occasional writer-contributor, making his second appearance on the show to date. Please welcome back Scott Cole!
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Warm welcome.
So, you said a year ago that this was your favorite film, and it was really ironic, you being from Nashville and loving Nashville. So, obviously, we had to make that pairing for this movie.
I appreciate you saving it for me. Yeah, it's always been kind of a weird thing. I've felt like being like, are people going to think it's dumb that I say my favorite movie or one of them is Nashville since I'm from Nashville? But it's just the way it worked out. I fell in love with this movie for real about 6 or 7 years ago. I've seen it 4 times in the theater. So yeah, I'm pretty much into this movie all the way.
Do they play it quite often in your area?
Yeah, I would say it's been like once every couple of years they've done it since maybe like 2018. One of those times I actually went twice in a week. So I may only have been 3 times, but yeah, right now it's cool because they're doing it as part of the theater I go to. The Indie Theater is having its 100th anniversary. So they're doing Nashville themed movies all week or all month rather. And they're also tying in with the Robert Altman series. So some of his other movies are going to be showing this month too. So I'm very excited about that.
Yes, absolutely. I know that he's obviously very popular among cinephiles, so definitely a good thing to explore some of his work, especially some of his 70s stuff. I don't know if there's like a weird gap for him. It seems like all of his famous movies are either in 2 periods, the 70s or the 90s.
Yeah, he had a rough 80s. Box office wise, somewhat critically too. I think his movies were not super well received. A few of them were, but they just kind of get lost in the shuffle. Popeye's one, which I like Popeye, but Popeye was not super well. I think it actually did okay at the box office at the time, but yeah, people don't love Popeye. It was kind of like his 80s was pretty terrible. He sort of, I think, resented the way that Hollywood had changed. And then The Player in 92 was when he took that on in like a satirical way, and it was a hit. So ironically, it was kind of got him back into it.
So as we mentioned, we will be discussing Nashville tonight, directed by Robert Altman, written by Joan Tewksbury, cinematography by Paul Lohman, music by Richard Baskin. This is the 50th anniversary of Nashville from 1975. It was a Best Picture nominee that year. It is starring a lot of people. This is going to be a very long list, but David Arkin as Norman, Barbara Baxley as Lady Pearl, Ned Beatty as Delbert Del Reese, Karen Black as Connie White, Timothy Brown as Tommy Brown, real creative there, Keith Carradine as Tom Frank, Geraldine Chaplin as Opal, Robert Duquois, I think it is, as Wade Cooley, Shelley Duvall as Martha, Alan Garfield as Barnett, Henry Gibson as Haven Hamilton, Scott Glenn as PFC Glenn Kelly, Jeff Goldblum as the Silent Tricycle Man, Barbara Harris as Winifred, or Albuquerque, if you will, David Hayward as Kenny Frazier, Michael Murphy as John Triplett, Alan F. Nichols as Bill, Dave Peel as Bud Hamilton, Christina Rains as Mary, Burt Remsen as Star, Lily Tomlin as Linnea Reese, Gwen Wells as Suleen Gay, Keenan Wynn as Mr. Green, and Thomas Hal Phillips as Hal Philip Walker, who's only in voice, I guess, audio only throughout the movie.
Right.
And he feels like one of those kind of that guys. If you see his picture, I'm sure you'd recognize him. But so, Dad, this is your first time with Nashville, is it not?
It is.
What were your first impressions?
I could not understand what I was watching. It reminded me of a family reunion where you have a bunch of people milling around talking and none of the conversations match or fit with each other, but yet they will spill over into another conversation and just keep going like that the entire day. And by the time you're done, your head's swimming with how much information you've gotten from people you didn't know and many people you never wish you had known.
I suppose that really does describe family. This film famously does not have like a really hard script. It has kind of a loose structure that it wants to follow, but really we're more into character development and putting people in moments and letting them act. So it's really not hard to think that. I think when my grandma described or asked me, what is the plot of the film? And I said, it might be generous to describe that there is one.
You can say like, I was trying to think of a way to summarize it. I was like, Friday through Tuesday in Nashville in the summer. A lot of musicians. Like, it's tough to talk about the plot of this movie.
Yeah, it's kind of a long winding road of just randomized scenes of people thrown together. Like, how do you really describe other than just a general description of the scene when they're in the car pileup and everybody's just out mingling on the highway for however long?
Yeah. Which I will say, one of the times I went to see it, Joan Tewksbury, the screenwriter, did a Q&A, or not a Q&A, but it was like a Zoom talk. It was a Q&A. And she was talking about like when they were down in Mississippi filming Thieves Like Us. And he told her Robert Altman wanted her to come to Nashville to just do some research because he was thinking about this movie. And she said when she got here and she left the airport, the first thing that happened was there was a giant car pileup on the interstate. So that's why she started the movie that way, because that was her first experience in Nashville, which I thought was kind of funny.
Well, you're kind of burning a little bit on my did you know, but I'll throw it in here. Oh, it's good. So the film was created due to an offer Robert Altman turned down. Originally, he was offered the chance to direct another script that took place in Nashville. He turned the project down, but became interested in the setting. He sent his script supervisor, Joan Tewksbury, to Nashville to observe the place and take notes. She wrote a diary, and that diary became the basis of her screenplay. From there, several scenes were rewritten or improvised by the performers, but a standard practice on most apparent Robert Altman films. So I agree. This is going to be a very difficult film to say what it's actually about. I think there are better people to probably describe what it is. But before we get there, since Dad does not have a prior relationship to this movie, I will just quickly ask him a question that we've been kind of doing for a few months now. Dad, did you like the film?
This is one of these where I've been like searching, trying to come up with an answer because I knew this question was coming. Let's put it this way. When I finished the film, the answer would have been no, because it didn't make any sense to me. But as time has gone by and I've thought about it and the nature of it, I would have to say I'm leaning towards I like it.
Okay.
I almost think I need to watch it again because it was such shock value the first time that I might have new appreciation or understanding of it by watching it again.
So I think I've described it before, and I'll use an example that I've brought up many times, usually describing comedies. Somebody had asked Will Ferrell once upon a time why his movies were funnier the second time. And I'll boil it down. I'll paraphrase a little bit here, but essentially it boils down to you don't pay attention to the plot the second time. And so they've interjected so many jokes that you can't catch them all the first time because you're so focused on the plot. The second time through, you already kind of know everything that happened, so you can pay attention to more of the periphery. To me, I was a little bit dreading watching this film because I remember being very bored when watching this about 4-ish years ago when I was crossing it off the AFI list for myself. I think it was in the second version of the AFI list. I don't think it was in the original Top 100 from 1998. But the second time through here, there was just enough where I'm like, I know there's no plot. I know this is kind of meandering, so I'm just going to let it wash over me. And there were several sections of this where I legitimately had good times laughing at just the absurdity of things, whether it be the Barbara Jean and the chicken thing or whatever the fuck was going on with that, or the reporter reporting on the bus graveyard or the car graveyard, just the absurdity of it. But there were other times where I'm like, this would be a hard sell to anybody to say, you have to watch this twice. It's a 2.5-hour movie with next to no plot. And I wonder if anybody in this day and age unless they're like a deep cinephile, is really going to be into that.
I will say the first time I watched it, I liked it, but I was not crazy about it. And I think what Dana was saying, I almost want him to watch it again because I feel like every time I watch it, I get new things out of it. And I notice more connections I didn't notice the first time. There's so much in it. You're right. The first time it's like being thrown to the deep end. You're just trying to survive the movie. And then as you I feel like it ages well. It's like in your mind, it ages well. It's like it takes a little bit, but like you said, it's a long movie, so it's hard to say that you need to watch it over and over again. But I will also admit that possibly my connection to Nashville has a lot to do with why I like it nostalgically. So I may be a little too far on that end too. So
I should learn by this, which is every time I see Robert Altman's films, I watch them for the film. And I should understand that Altman has to have one of the driest senses of humor of any person I've ever met or known of, because I need to start thinking of these as not being necessarily a serious film, but his thing of what he thinks is just funny.
It certainly hits you in the face in a way that you're not sure of. You and Grandma focused so much on how poor the singing was. Like
Henry Gibson.
Wow. So bad. And
I've had laryngitis and sung better.
But the absurdity of obviously placing where these are supposed to be country western stars and they're all terrible singers is very much intentional. And I think I only got that the second time through.
Mm-hmm. There were a lot of really bad. I mean, I love Johnny Cash, but Johnny Cash could not sing. He was terrible.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pull that one out and put that on the internet this week and see what kind of TikTok numbers that'll do.
Yeah.
I was going to say, one of the times I watched it, I actually watched it with Altman's commentary, which I found very enlightening. But pretty much what you're saying, like even the scene at the exit end where Bill, Tom, and Mary are singing, there's a part where her voice like cracks in the middle of the song and she clears her throat into the mic. And he's like, yeah, we just left that in because we're like, wow, that's real. Like, I think he just likes that they sound like real people, Yeah, I think that he does get a kick out of that a little bit.
Well, I kept thinking to myself, every time Sulene would sing was like every one of those American Idol episodes where Simon Cowell would just rail into somebody because they were terrible and they'd convince themselves they were going to be this huge star. And it was hilarious. That was the entire reason for tuning into the show for the first half.
Oh, yeah. And he said about that actress, Gwen Wells, they obviously wanted her to be a bad singer for the role, but they thought she was so bad that they sent her to singing lessons for a little bit to try to get a little better. And he's like, that was the best she could do. She was just tone deaf. Like that was her best. And
wow.
Poor Gwen Wells. Gosh, that is a risky thing to do on film, is to do that. Put yourself out there like that.
Which was worse, striptease or her singing?
So as we've mentioned a few times, this is the 50th anniversary of Nashville. So just a little bit more background on the film. Nashville was released on June 11th, 1975. On a budget of $2.2 million, it would go on to gross roughly $10 million and finish outside the top 25 of the year at the worldwide box office. Most of the top critics were effusive in their praise at the time for the film, and Nashville would go on to be nominated for 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, Director for Robert Altman, 2 Supporting Actress nominations for Lily Tomlin and Ronnie Blakely, and it won Best Original Song for I'm Easy for Keith Carradine. It became the first and only one of the 8, as of 2024, films to win Best Picture from 3 out of the 4 major U.S. film critics groups: LA, the National Board of Review, New York, and I'm drawing a blank, maybe it's the National Society of Film Critics, NSFC, along with the following year, All the President's Men, Terms of Endearment, Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, The Hurt Locker, Drive My Car, and Tar. You'll notice that very few of the ones mentioned actually went on to win Best Picture. Obviously, some separation between both the public perceptions and the Academy versus the actual critics. Nashville is regarded in critical circles as Altman's magnum opus, as well as one of the greatest films of all time. In 2007, the movie was ranked number 59 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies 10th Anniversary Edition list. It did not appear on the original 1998 list. The song I'm Easy was named the 81st best song of all time by the American Film Institute, probably in 2003 would be my guess. In 2013, Entertainment Weekly ranked it as the 9th greatest film in history. Nashville ranked 14th in BBC's 2015 list of the 100 greatest American films. The February 2020 issue of New York Magazine lists Nashville as among the best movies that lost Best Picture at the Oscars. In 1992, Nashville was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. It currently holds an 89% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 96 score on Metacritic, and a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So, I will pose the question we've been dreading. What is this movie about?
Okay, so Friday through Tuesday in Nashville, 24 characters coming from all different walks of life. You've got, your big country music stars. You've got some more struggling people trying to make it into the country music scene. You've got folk singers from LA. I guess they'd be considered folk singers from LA coming in to record in Nashville. And they're all going to have, I'm trying to think the right way to say it. It's like, it's just them living their lives. And it's a vibe. You just have to get on the right wavelength with this movie. And you're just like, see, I can't even describe that without going into vibe. Like, it's hard to even stick to the plot when you're talking about the plot.
All right, let's just go with it's a vibes movie.
Okay, I like that.
I think it's a story of how everybody's the star of their own movie, and it's a little individualized movies throughout. And it's the relationship between music and art and celebrity and non-celebrities, and how they all intertwine and overlap, I guess.
That would be great. If you could explain to me what the meaning of the shooting in the final scene is, because that's the thing that seems the most out of place with the entire rest of the movie. It's an actual plot device in a movie with no plot.
Well, apparently, I was reading in my research that when John Lennon was shot, a reporter from the Washington Post called Altman and said, "Do you feel guilty?" And he's like, "Feel guilty for what?" And they said, "Well, you're the one who kind of implied this was going to happen, and now it's happened." And he goes, "I didn't imply anything. I gave you a warning that there was going to be people who are going to cross over and shoot celebrities just to become them celebrities themselves." And I think that's his ultimate warning in this film, is that those who are not celebrities will go to extreme measures in order to become celebrities themselves. And we're seeing that. How many people right now are running around, they see a celebrity in a restaurant, and their little phones are out photographing, hoping they catch them doing something wrong so they can post it on the internet and be famous themselves for having caught some faux pas a celebrity does. Doesn't have to rise to the level of an assassination, but in some part, it's at least character assassination.
Yeah, and I also, to add to that, I remember Altman also saying that they screened the movie before it came out for Barbara Streisand, and she watched it. And after that scene, she was like furious with Robert Altman. She's like, "How could you put that on film?" She was like, "That's like all of our number one fear is that happening, and you put it out there." But it's also, I feel like that part of what happens at the end also comes down a lot to what we know about Kenny in the movie up to that point. Like, obviously there's something about Barbara Jean that kind of sets him off. Like they do that slow zoom in on him when she's performing that slow song at the Opry. And all we really know about him is that he has a weird relationship with his mother. Like he's on the phone with her. That's a weird scene where he hangs up on her and pretends he's still talking to her. So it's kind of like, I don't know if I've thought about that a lot, why it happens and what's it for. And it's kind of crazy, except for to think about, as Dana was saying, like in a way, it's kind of the way it makes, I guess her name is Albuquerque, Barbara Harris, how she finally becomes a star just by the happenstance of standing there when somebody's like, there's been a shooting, sing something. And you get the impression she's going to become a star from that. So that's weird too. I don't know. Yeah.
There's so many different offending principles of that entire moment where, one, we've relied so heavily on flashing back or references to the Kennedy assassination. So he pulls out the Dallas reference for some reason. Then you have the actual country western star, who is a quote unquote singer, trying to encourage somebody else to sing in the moment, not realizing, I don't know, this is my job, and not doing it himself. Then you have her leading this song that's basically about we're not going to be neutered, we're not going to be silenced, we're going to be okay. And so it just reminds me of the end of Life of Brian. Look on the bright side of life.
Well, in Haven's defense, he has been shot.
Well, that's fair.
That may be why he's not singing.
But then again, you think about all this and they're talking about Dallas, and one of the things, guy was a local reporter in Dallas. He just happened to be on the sidelines, and all of a sudden it happens in front of him and he's getting stories and sending it to New York and ends up getting a job and moving up the ranks. Dan Rather. So that's how these things happen. Events trigger and people are launched into stardom as a result of something that happens by chance.
Yeah.
So, Dad, do you have a plot summary ready for us?
I do. A sprawling mosaic of American life. Nashville follows 24 characters over 5 days, leading to a political rally in the titular city. Set against the backdrop of country music and political ambition, the film weaves together intersecting stories of musicians, wannabe stars, politicians, and ordinary citizens. Through overlapping dialogue and naturalistic performances, Altman paints a satirical yet poignant portrait of fame, identity, and the uneasy state of the nation during the 1970s. The film crescendos into a shocking act of violence, underscoring its themes of disillusionment and the chaotic intersection of celebrity and politics.
Thank you.
Very nice.
All right, did you know? The film was very much improvised by the actors and actresses who used the screenplay only as a guide. They spent a great amount of their time in character, and the movie was shot almost entirely in sequence. Did you know? All songs were recorded live rather than being pre-recorded in a studio, which goes to your comment before about the clearing of the throat in the mic. That obviously does not happen if it was in a studio recording. Did you know? This movie's 11 Golden Globe nominations remains the most for a single film. It also received 4 nominations in a single acting category. This was and remains unprecedented for major film award shows. I mean, I know we don't talk about the Golden Globes much here, but this was definitely a critic's darling. I don't know if it measured up on the audience perspective, but this was something that the critics clearly were invested in at the time. Did you know? In the opening sequence, the character played by Henry Gibson demanded that his piano player be replaced by the pig, quote unquote. At that time in Nashville, one of the most in-demand session players was a blind pianist named Hargus Pig Robbins. The man playing the piano in that scene is actually Richard Baskin, the music supervisor on the film. And finally, did you know? The role of Linnea Reese was created for and by Louise Fletcher, who herself was the daughter of 2 deaf parents and knew sign language. The role was eventually played by Lily Tomlin. Tomlin concluded that things worked out in the end because she was offered the role of Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1975 and turned it down, which enabled Fletcher to eventually get it. So in a sense, they simply traded roles.
I remember also in Louise Fletcher's Oscar speech, she speaks sign language to her parents. So I just forgot about that until you said that. That makes sense.
I honestly could see Lily Tomlin doing the Nurse Ratched role, though. I think she could have done it pretty well.
As long as she didn't break out into what's the operator character from Laugh-In.
Yeah. Is it Geraldine? Is that her name?
Yeah, Geraldine.
Yeah.
And so that looks like a good spot for our first break. We will be right back.
We're all getting fed up of endlessly scrolling for our next movie fix. So to get passionate about films again, join 3 movie mates on the Never Ending Watchlist movie podcast, where we take you on a movie journey as we seek to build the ultimate movie watchlist.
Seen all of those films are absolute bangers.
Yeah,
absolute bangers.
Bangers.
I applaud you again, sir.
We deep dive specific movies to find out facts, theories, and funny takes, and ultimately decide whether a movie is worthy of being on the watchlist.
I can't recommend this film.
Oh!
We'll debate top 5s, rank directors' movies, and interview film fans just like you.
And she is an incredibly complex villain. She's fierce, she's immovable.
So whether you're a casual movie fan or hardened cinephile, we've got plenty for you to enjoy.
I got outvoted by the guy who chose the movie for this episode.
Join me, Damon Carter, Alex Hall, and Cam Young on the Never Ending Watchlist movie podcast every week on Podcast Everywhere.
It's easier to find Cameron on Facebook than it is to find a plot in existence. Right, anyway, for now, it's farewell to Alex.
Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 266th episode, we welcome back film critic Michael Willoughby to discuss another Pixar classic with Inside Out from 2015, celebrating its 10th anniversary. Written and directed by Pete Docter with Meg LaFava and Josh Cooley. Cinematography by Patrick Lynn and Kim White. Music by Michael Giacchino. Starring Amy Poehler, Phyllis Smith, Richard Kind, Bill Hader, Louis Black, and Mindy Kaling. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Let's check in for a moment with our guest. Scott, what have you been working on and where can people find you?
So I am on Twitter. I still call it Twitter at Cole, Scott, all spelled out. So the word Cole, the word comma, the word Scott. And I've been just actually what I'm working on right now mostly is I'm about to be on Revisionist Almanac doing the year 1991. So I've been watching a ton of movies from 1991. Like anytime I have free time, I want to watch a movie. I've been forcing myself to work my way down the list. And it's been fun. It's been like homework, but it's been fun homework. So I've been enjoying that. I feel like I've missed some new movies. I need to probably go back. I definitely need to go see Mission Impossible, but but yeah, no, that's really, I've really been diving into that. It's been fun. So I'm looking forward to that show too.
Are you recording in August?
Yes. Yeah, we are.
Okay, so you're the month ahead of
August.
us. So we definitely understand your prep plight.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, here's my problem is I have the list of movies I have to watch, but I keep getting stuck on these terrible like thrillers. I'm like, oh, that looks fun. I'm going to watch Mortal Thoughts with Demi Moore, and I should be watching,
oh God,
I don't know, Bugs. I did watch Bugsy, but other stuff like Bugsy.
I forget what all was up that year. I know, obviously, Silence of the Lambs was the eventual winner, but was Dick Tracy that year?
No, that was the year before.
Okay.
91, you got your Bugsy, you got Prince of
Okay.
Tides, you've got JFK, and Beauty and the Beast, the first year an animated film got Best Picture nomination.
Okay.
Two of those movies, I won't say anything. I don't want to spoil, but yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
There's a lot of crossover between our audience and I'm sure Revisionist Almanac, so definitely don't want to preempt too much and leave the surprise for on the recording.
Someone in the Discord was starting to talk about Silence of the Lambs. I was like, I can't do this. I can't have this conversation right now.
Yeah, definitely. So, and for what it's worth, we are a Resistance podcast, so please refer to it only as Twitter. We certainly don't kowtow to Elon, screw Elon, and we certainly don't refer to any stupid names like X.
Thank you. Yes, perfect. Okay. I'm in good company then.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you are also someone who is currently working on our collective project that we have yet to announce formally. How is that going without talking about it too in depth?
Yeah, I have been working on a preliminary list. Challenging for sure. And, you think about the different criteria you try to bring to it. It's like, how much does, let's just say, for example, Nashville. How much of my love for that movie is my particular circumstance and relationship to it versus how great it really is? You know what I mean? It's like, you feel like there's a weird push-pull with that, so I'm trying to kind of figure out. And also, I feel like there's a lot of movies I need to see before. Like, there's some classic blind spots I really want to address before I make that list. So, yeah, I'm excited for it. It's going to be, prep, but I like it.
Yeah, I would feel the same way. I know that, unfortunately, my obligation is first to finishing the year 1982 for our appearance the month after you're on Revisionist Almanac. But as soon as that is done, and I feel adequately prepared for that episode, it will be to try and fit in as many of these films from my list of 31 that I feel I need to see before I finalize whatever we're working on, just to make sure that it gets into the rotation or there's no real huge blind spots, at least this time around. And I wouldn't worry about it too much. There's always going to be some level of subjectivity to this. It's natural when you get a bunch of film people together that not everybody completely agrees, but the whole point is can you reach some form of nuanced consensus among a collective group of people what actually is all going on in this project. So we look forward. Obviously, we're very happy to have you and many of our other guests that have been a part of this show so far on this project with us. More details will be coming. I promise you, I'm not going to keep everybody in the dark forever, but at least for the audience yet, we are not yet prepared to completely talk about this formally and announce what's going on in the background and the scenes. But many of your favorite guests are a part of this larger collaboration project that we have going. So, all right, then let's jump back into the show. We left off at best performances. Dad, who do you have down?
I have Lily Tomlin. I like her job, or the job she did in this. She was believable in her part. And even though she was, the choir singer and mother of the deaf boys and all this, there was something there that was missing in her, and it ultimately came out in her affair. And I think she played that part well as almost a tortured soul.
I would agree. I think that if you were to name one person who really breaks out for me in this movie, especially on second watch, it's probably her and her character. You can maybe name a couple of other people, but they just don't have the same staying power or recognition that obviously Lily Tomlin has had for many, many years after the fact. And she's gone on to a fairly productive and famous career. But I definitely found her to be the most easy to follow character line because it felt like she had the most true character development. And so that's why I ultimately went with her for charismatic. But my best performance, I kind of defaulted in a way that we often do, just totality of the performance. You're talking about tone. You're talking about trying to get the actors to do a very improvised thing, which is not going to be easy. He kind of birthed the script through an advisor that he had. So I'm defaulting to Robert Altman just again, the general aesthetic of the movie and how you watch it is very much controlled by who the director is here.
It's so intrinsically in its bones Altman that it. Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's like, what would it be without Robert Altman all over it? It's for sure.
So who is your best performance, Scott?
My best performance is Ronnie Blakely, who plays Barbara Jean, for a couple of reasons. First is obviously she's patterned after Loretta Lynn in a lot of ways. The kind of the struggles that character goes through, sort of her manner. And I think that's the performance and character I always think about first when I think of the movie. I think it might be because it's the one that kind of breaks my heart the most, but I think she does such a great job. I know she was actually like a late add to the cast too. She wasn't originally that part. She just was writing songs for the movie, and whoever they had, I think it was Susan Anspach or whatever, she had to drop out. So Ronnie Blakely took the part. And what I'll say about it is there's a certain way that she had. I feel like in my life, living in the South forever, I've met and known a lot of Barbara Jean type people, not necessarily country like stars, but the people who speak the way she does, kind of ramble on a little bit. Like they just have that way. And she just nails it to me so perfectly that I recognize that character in a lot of people I've met, even people in my family. So I think she runs away with it. And I think we'll talk about this later with the song, but her performance of the song Dues at the Opry, that's the second song. She sings the slower song, just is a showstopper. It just like, everybody's just frozen during that moment. It's such a good performance and very emotional.
If you were to really highlight one person who could definitely sing, it's probably her. I think Keith Carradine is kind of or I guess I was surprised at how well he could sing, but especially when they get into the trio, I thought that was also very good. But she by far as a solo artist was the most passable for somebody who could have been a musical star.
And I also think her songs that she has in the movie sound the most like real country songs to me, in my opinion.
So best secondary performances, I have the aforementioned Keith Carradine. Again, he's kind of a surprising person, especially where my relationship with Keith Carradine is as a much older guy. I think the first time that I really got to know him, or at least had a relationship with him as an actor, is on the show Dexter. And by that point, he's in probably his mid-50s, mid-60s, or whatever. He's an old guy, but he's clean shaven. He's in the FBI. He's definitely not basically a traveling hippie as he is in this movie. And he's hard to recognize, but he's kind of a surprisingly charming person. He's got this affable quality to him. He definitely can sing a lot better than I thought he could. And even while I'm Easy isn't necessarily like the most complicated or difficult song necessarily, it's very simplistic in its lyrics and its tonality and such. It's intimate in a way that most of the other songs is not, and I think that's why it probably broke through to win the Oscar.
Yeah. I've heard him talk about this movie and his performance in it, and he's said before that he went to Robert Altman and kind of was trying to get out of it. He was like, I don't want to play this guy. He's like, I'm not right for it. He felt like he wasn't right for it. And Altman kept him on the role and was like, no, you'll do fine, blah, blah, blah. And he said, like, ultimately what he realized was he was judging and didn't like the character, but Altman could see that what would come across in the movie is a guy playing a guy who hates himself. And so, it's just, he's great. I think he's really, really good in the movie. And yeah, I don't have a lot to compare him to either, because I feel like I haven't seen him in a ton of stuff, but yeah, he's great.
Other best secondary performances?
I have Henry Gibson.
So good.
He does a really good job in this. Stuck on himself, blind as to what's going on around him for the most part, and lost in his own stardom. Didn't recognize Elliot Gould. Didn't recognize, okay. The idea being that stars tend to migrate towards stars and that they don't all know each other, even though they all tend to migrate together. But I liked his performance. even if he can't sing a lick.
Yeah, Henry Gibson is great. He's maybe my second funniest performance of the movie. Like he just makes me laugh. So many of his lines. He's so sort of self-important. It's funny. It always works. I decided, so I picked a much smaller part for because I kind of wanted to pick. There were a lot of options I had for who I could pick because I like a lot of the performances in this movie. I went with Christina Rains, who plays Mary of the Bill, Tom, and Mary, for a specific reason. She's not really in the first half of the movie very much. She pops in every now and then, but it's really the second half of the movie where she kind of comes into focus. And it's in that exit in scene when she's sitting at the table. Geraldine Chaplin's Opal is lets it slip that she's bragging about the fact that she slept with Tom. And all we've known of Mary up to this point is the scene where she's laying in bed with Tom, practicing saying "I love you" to him while he's asleep. So when she reveals that, Christina or Mary turns away from her and kind of looks at the camera and covers her mouth, but she just has the look of hurt on her face, like the way just everybody knows that feeling of when somebody you really like has been found to be, liking someone else or something like just that. It's such a universal feeling. And I think she really gets it across and nails it. And then when they get up and do the song and she looks him in the eye and sings that line of that song about her heart being broken, I just think she is, with such a small amount of screen time, I think she tells you everything you need to know. Yeah, I think she's great.
So I already gave my most charismatic. What were the other nominees here?
Well, it's going to sound stupid, but he seemed to make a career out of being in films and standing out for doing absolutely nothing and having absolutely no relevance to the film. Jeff Goldblum.
I thought you were going to say Ned Beatty there for a second, but okay.
No, Ned Beatty's been the center of a lot of things, including a rather bizarre love story. But that's another point.
A different 70s movie.
Yes. But Jeff Goldblum, I mean, you can look through his career. Half of everything Jeff Goldblum does is he's in a film and you haven't figured out why. I mean, I started noticing this when one of my favorite films of the late 70s, early 80s was Silverado.
Yeah.
And you watch Silverado and you were like, why the fuck is Jeff Goldblum in this? He's useless. What, they just needed a Jew? Have diversity in the cast?
Wow, Dad. That'll play well.
Well, I can somewhat say that, I guess. Since I have Jewish ancestry.
Oh God.
But no, I mean, it's serious. Why was he in the film? I guess Danny Glover was in there too, so there was some diversity of cast.
Okay, can kind of see what Dana's saying here. I mean, when you think about Jurassic Park, he's just there adding for the one-liners. He doesn't really do much in terms of the plot of the movie. He's just there to be funny and to be, charismatic, so to speak. So I see what you're saying.
And to take his shirt off.
And to, I guess he's the one person who's dissenting against. Maybe he is more important to the plot than I realized. But anyway, he's charismatic.
So it took Steven Spielberg to figure out what the right role for Jeff Goldblum was.
I guess.
All right.
I had for charismatic Geraldine Chaplin as Opal. So she's a chaplain. It should not be surprising that she's a great comedian to me. But the way in which she just really goes for broke with this part, I admire it a lot. And I think she's funny. Honestly, anytime she's trying to be funny, I'm laughing in the movie. When, Bud is singing that song to her and she gets that look on her face and then she's like, is that Elliot Gould? Like, it's just everything she does in this movie makes me laugh. The buses makes me laugh. The hat with the music note. I just can't help it. I think she's really funny in this movie in a part that could easily, it does look silly at times, but I think she really, really sells it. And I like that she goes for it. So.
I would definitely concur on the 2 car graveyards. The buses and the cars. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here. I have recording studio, which is kind of the opening where they kind of flip between the choir and then Haven Hamilton doing his best Rex Harrison impression. Then we have traffic jam, which is the aforementioned car pileup, and then everybody gets out of their cars and has this like semi-community rally on the highway. Then we have Barbara Jean at Opryland, which is her rambling and then we have the striptease, which I don't need to probably go into too much further detail there. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And then finally Parthenon, which is the reference to the final scene, sequence, whatever you want to call it. So out of these, what did I miss in a 2-hour and 40-minute film?
I think the cookout or the gathering at, where they're all gathered outside in the garden, and that's when Elliot Gould makes his cameo and such. I think that's a relevant scene by itself.
I think the I'm Easy scene at the exit in, for sure. That's a classic song. It won an Oscar, but it's more the way they use that song with his character so that it's so manipulative of all the women in that room, and you get the way their reaction shots are perfect. Lily Tomlin's reaction shot is breathtaking, probably, and my feeling probably the main reason why she got nominated, because she conveys so much with her face just in that long shot of, he holds it on her for so long while he's singing that song. And I just find that to be a kind of another like showstopper moment where you're kind of blown away. I am anyway.
All right. So we have recording studio, traffic jam, cookout, Barbara Jean at Opryland, striptease, I'm Easy, and Parthenon. What is the best scene of the movie?
For me, it's traffic jam, because everybody is in the same situation. So they have no choice but they're all brought down to a common theme, a common situation, and they have no other option than to mingle. And so I think it shows that celebrity, non-celebrity, talent, non-talent, one thing can bring everybody on an equal footing.
So a film that I have also had difficulty necessarily appreciating because it seems plotless and much more about an aesthetic. This is the scene that really reminded me of Playtime by Jacques Tati, that it's kind of got that level of an aesthetic to it, that they're all kind of commingling, but I mean, at least there's dialogue, so it's not like a direct play on it, but it's just kind of got this aesthetic feel where they're all stopped by the same inconvenience, but then they're forced to kind of interact. And it's kind of got this, for lack of a better term, je ne sais quoi about what's going on in that sequence. If I have to pick best scene might be tough. I will go with Barbara Jean at Opryland, just because I think that's like the seminal performance. I know I didn't nominate Ronnie Blakely for anything, but certainly I that was the most laugh out loud funny moment of the entire movie for me, was her every time she'd start up the band and then, well, nope, I've got some other anecdote that I've got to tell.
That's what I would say out of those 5. I would go with Barbara Jean at Opryland. For this movie, I feel like I'd have to pick a scene that has music, has a performance in it, because it's so much part of the movie. And I think those performances that she gives in that scene are so good. And you know what? Even my favorite, Geraldine Chaplin, she's funny in that scene too. And she's talking to Scott Glenn about Vietnam. That's funny. Yeah, I think that's the one I would go with. Again, Ronnie Blakely is just incredible in that scene.
As far as favorite scene, I don't want to be that guy who picks the striptease and it makes it seem like I'm the creeper or whatever. But frankly, just the awkwardness of bringing in this person, and clearly she is tone deaf. Like, there's no possible way she should have been picked to be the entertainment, except that she looked good. And she obviously is so brokenhearted by the end of this scene at what happens with everything that's there. And it really kind of makes the audience feel a little bit creepy by the end of it. The voyeuristic, you're obviously seeing this striptease for your own satisfaction, much in the same way that these guys who come to a political rally are seeing this thing. And it feels awkward instead of titillating. But at the same time, it's so funny that how she just cannot sing at all, a lick of anything. And they finally like, yeah, we don't need to hear you sing. That's not why you're here.
Yeah. You know, another thing that's upsetting about that particular scene that I noticed this time that I hadn't paid attention to before is up until that point, we've met Haven's son, Buddy, and he's been like a nice guy who's, you know, singing that song he wrote for Geraldine Chaplin. He's been kind of friendly. And he's like in that table with them, just like cheering her on and drunk and stuff. And you're just like, I mean, it makes sense. You know, you find out more about people the longer you spend with them and stuff. And people have, you know, do stupid things when they're drunk, you know, but it's just you're kind of disappointed he's there partaking in that based on what we know about him up to that point.
Dad, favorite scene?
Barbara Jean at Opryland, simply because it was the funniest. So, as a brief aside, if Barbara Jean is supposed to be Loretta Lynn, obviously with the husband being Doolittle, the question then is Harv a country star or an amalgamation of country performers? I'm looking at some of the top ones at that time.
Do you mean Haven?
Or Haven, excuse me. You know, I'm talking George Jones. We're talking Conway Twitty.
Yeah, maybe Conway Twitty. Yeah.
Porter Wagner.
Yeah.
So
it might be an amalgamation of all those, like you said. Yeah, because I can see a lot of each of those in there.
Yeah. Roy Acuff even.
Yeah. When you said Porter Wagner, that really made me. I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of that in there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You lost me at half of those names, but okay.
I'm all in. I know. Yeah, I know everything you're saying.
I have a great Porter Wagner story, by the way. I'll tell you during the break.
No, just drop it now. There's going to be no other opportunity to name drop a Porter Wagner story.
Okay, so my grandfather loved Porter Wagner. That was his favorite. And I must have been about 7 or 8. And I used to go to sleep at night, and on Clear Station, you could get the Grand Ole Opry. And so on Saturday nights, I would go to sleep with my radio on, and I'd listen to the Opry because my parents were big country and Western fans. So I wanted to go along. So we went, and they came out and said, Porter Wagner is ill tonight, and if you want a refund, you can have a refund, but his partner is willing to come on stage and perform instead of him. And she came out and performed for an hour and a half straight, did every kind of song you could think of. I thought she was absolutely wonderful. My grandfather said, well, she was okay, but she was no Porter Wagner. It was Dolly Parton.
Yeah, Dolly Parton. That's awesome. Yep.
All right.
The subject of I Will Always Love You. I'm sure you knew that. Yeah. Well, this ties in perfectly with what Dana just said, because he talked about the Opry. My favorite scene is the Grand Ole Opry scene, that like 10-minute chunk of Tommy Brown performing, Haven singing that ridiculous song about leaving his wife.
For the sake of the children.
Yeah. And you meet Connie White, who Karen Black, very good as this just kind of above it all, you know, just, she's just great at playing like just an unfriendly presence in the movie. But the reason why I think I like that scene, or why it's my favorite, is because I grew up watching the Grand Ole Opry and listening to it with my grandparents, and it just definitely gives me that nostalgia high that only stuff like that can. Even the part where they're doing the little radio jingle or like commercial for Goo Goo Clusters, that just all is perfect for, it just reminds me of childhood, and I've just grown up with this stuff forever. So it's feels real to me. Around the money.
Moving to most indelible, for me, it's the ending, just because of how strange it is and how much it doesn't seem to fit with most of the rest of the movie. Although I think the further we've talked about it, the more I can kind of reconcile it with everything else. It's just, on an initial watch and even a secondary watch, I'm just waiting for this whole thing. and it ends in the most kind of ridiculous way that you can think of. So for me, thinking back on it, and I saw it only one time prior to this prep watch, was like 4 years ago. It was the number one thing that I thought of.
I have it also. It's the culmination of everything and all the stories seeming to come together at the very end.
I have it also. I will say, as a quick aside, it is strange to go watch this movie in a movie theater and then drive 3 minutes down the road and look to the right and see the Parthenon. It's weird, but that's what happened to me. Yeah, I think one of the weird things about this movie is the first time I ever saw it was like a day after I'd first seen Brady Corbett's movie Vox Lux, which is also about somebody who becomes a famous singer through like tragedy and just become, kind of accidentally. So I thought that was weird that I was watching those back to back because of the way this movie ends.
So if you're looking for a double feature recommendation from Scott here.
Yeah. Vox Lux, which also has concert performances in it. But yeah. And also I think it's an interesting scene in the sense that everyone's together. The only time maybe everyone's together, aside from maybe at the airport at the beginning, but everyone's there. All the characters are there. People, when they pan across the stage, showing everybody just waiting in the wings, it's everybody we've met pretty much. So, yeah.
All right. That looks like a good spot for our second break. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our master greatest movie of all time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmote podcast and find it as the top entry on the greatest movie of all time podcast show page. That is the grades we've done so far for all 240 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
We have a very long list. Loretta Swit, 87, American actress, known for MASH. Freebie and the Bean, Race with the Devil, 2-time Emmy winner, 1980 and 82. Also, interestingly, the model for Miss Piggy. Frances Dowell, 83. British screenwriter for Big Bad Mama, Death Sport, and film producer for Starship Troopers. Long-time collaborator with Roger Corman. Peter Kwong, 73, American actor. Known for roles in Big Trouble in Little China, The Golden Child, and Cooties. Alf Clausen, 84, American composer, known for his work on The Simpsons, Elf, Moonlighting. 2-time Emmy winner. Renee Victor, 86, American actress. Known for roles in the show The Weeds, the Pixar movie Coco, and the video game The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. James Lowe, 82, American musician, lead singer of the Electric Prunes, and record producer, a woofer in tweeters clothing. Valerie Mahaffey, 71, American actress, known for her roles in the shows Northern Exposure, Dead to Me, Desperate Housewives, and Young Sheldon. Emmy winner in 1992. Jonathan Jost, 59, American actor, known for his roles in The King of the Hill, Ray Donovan, In Plain Sight, and Parks and Recreation. Devin Hargis, 41, American actor, known for his roles on Blue Bloods, Orange is the New Black, FBI, Gotham, and Boardwalk Empire. And Billy Williams, 96, British cinematographer known for his work on Gandhi, On Golden Pond, and The Exorcist. 2-time Oscar winner.
Thank you, Dad. Obviously, there are a few names that stick out chief among several of these that we're recognizing this week. Loretta Swit is obviously a known quantity for being on one of the most popular sitcoms of all time in MASH. She was a primary character in that. I'm sure many people of your generation, Dad, we recognized George Wendt, I believe 2 weeks ago for passing, and now Loretta Swit. I have a feeling that many of the people that were from some of your favorite sitcoms and shows and such, they're just unfortunately in that age group right now where we're going to be losing quite a few of them. And so we'll obviously have to recognize them here. I know that you're going to have some personal feelings that I'll let you express here in a second, but Valerie Mahaffey, somebody who I don't think everybody just knew her name, but certainly somebody who popped up in a lot of TV shows that people watched. Did to Me is kind of a random one that I know it was on Netflix, so there were a lot of people, I'm sure, that watched that more than we probably know because we don't always know the numbers to that. But it's just another character. She's playing the really suffocating mom in that show for some reason, and she was really good at it. And obviously, multiple Emmy winners in this list of people that we have here today. I'll also recognize somebody that I have kind of an unusual relationship with in Jonathan Joss. Some terrible circumstances that ended up in his demise this week. I won't go into them here. Obviously, you can search them yourselves. Terrible tragedy, specifically with his particular passing, this being Pride Month and all, and we will definitely recognize that here at the end of the show. But I just wanted to recognize him here for a very small part in probably my favorite all-time TV show in Parks and Recreation as Chief Wamapoke, and just how much he plays up that part so wonderfully to make it more or less poking fun at white people who are constantly on edge to talk about anything having to do with race in that show, and tiptoeing around all of the Native American stuff that we feel so guilty about, and making it kind of like white guilt be the center of how his character is appreciated in that show. I just thought every time he came in, and I think he was only in a handful of episodes through the course of the show, but every time he came in, he just made the show that much brighter in his few brief moments. So I unfortunately don't really know him for several of his other roles. I was not a King of the Hill watcher, but for my relationship with him in Parks and Recreation, obviously somebody that I'm terribly sorry to see him pass, especially in the way that he did, but just generally, there are a lot of people to be missed this week.
Yeah, I understand perfectly, and unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of this start. You know, again, I saw an interview Dick Van Dyke did this last week where he talked about the fact that it's nice to be 99, but he doesn't have anybody left that he's friends with because they're all dead. We're going to start losing a lot of these people. Really enjoyed Loretta Swit. Valerie Mahaffey. I was a huge Northern Exposure fan. Your mother and I never missed an episode. We thought it was just absolutely riveting TV. It was a cross between drama and just absolute comedy. And I think it's one of the reasons why several of the characters she's seemed to really enjoy in film and other works outside of that. I will miss several of these people, and several of them, I think it's nice that we're able to do this because some of their work, they're older, some of their work is older. I think this gives them some deserving recognition for the contributions they've made to entertainment.
Yeah, about Valerie, I was going to say, well, also, first I was going to ask, was Northern Exposure what she won the Emmy for? Because I think the time period would have been right. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember her as, I've seen her, you know, she's one of those people you just see in a lot of stuff, like you said, everywhere. I remembered her most from Seinfeld, an episode where she played, I think it was George's girlfriend who was going to help Jerry with a tax problem or something, but she was just very memorable to me in that part. Jonathan Joss, like you said, with Parks and Recreation was awesome. And then I was a big King of the Hill fan, so his voice is a big part of that show. And then, so on my Twitter profile, I have like the 3 things you need to know about me are I like movies, I like tennis, and I like the first like 10 seasons of The Simpsons. Like it may extend to like 14. The 90s into like the early 2000s of The Simpsons are my favorite TV show. I watch them on repeat. I fall asleep to them. I just watch them a lot. Basically any musical moment that you really like from that show is because of Alf Clausen. So that was a really big bummer, although it has been nice to revisit a lot of stuff. online where people are posting their favorite musical moments and their funniest musical moments from The Simpsons. That's been nice to see, like, a compilation of those. But yeah, that's sad. He'll be missed.
And another person that, I don't know, we're not going to talk about cinematography when it comes to 1982, but Billy Williams having a nice 2-year back-to-back run between winning for On Golden Pond and Gandhi in consecutive years.
Yeah.
Gandhi, say what you will about that movie, and I know that, Dad, you will have your just desserts when we get to the 1982 Revisionist Almanac. You've definitely teased that, and I will definitely be the Gandhi defender for that episode. I have a feeling. However, I don't think you can criticize the way that film looks. I think it does share a lot of the epicness of its forerunners before it, and he certainly did not disappoint there. So, all right. We say goodbye to all these we have lost this week with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's make our awkward transition to best funniest lines as we do every week. I will start with Hal Philip Walker. Who do you think is running Congress? Farmers, engineers, teachers, businessmen? No, my friends. Congress is run by lawyers. A lawyer is trained for 2 things and 2 things only. To clarify, that's one, and to confuse, that's the other thing. He does whichever is to his client's advantage. Did you ever ask a lawyer the time of day? He told you how to make a watch, didn't he? Ever ask a lawyer how to get to Mr. Jones's house in the country? You got lost, didn't you? Congress is composed of 535 individuals. 288 are lawyers. And you wonder what's wrong in Congress? No wonder we often know how to make a watch, but we don't know the time of day.
I don't have too many because I found this to be more dialogue driven than quips. But I have Hamilton. Haven, excuse me.
That's
Haven
the second
Hamilton.
time you've done that.
I know. Haven Hamilton. Y'all take it easy now. This isn't Dallas. It's Nashville. They can't do this to us here in Nashville. Let's show them what we're made of. Come on, everybody. Sing. Somebody sing.
Yeah, I also have Haven. He says, that was Julie Christie. She's a star. She's won an Academy Award. Connie says, oh, come on. She can't even comb her hair.
Haven Hamilton, the line that I led off the program with. I don't know who you are or what you are doing here, but I will not tolerate rudeness in the presence of a star. Pauses, glances at Elliot Gould. 2 stars.
Barbara Jean. I'd like to thank you for coming out to greet me today. It's great to be home. It's hot as a firecracker, and me and the boys are going to be out here at the Opry all week. And like my granddaddy always used to say, if you're down to the river, I hope you'll drop in.
Opal, have you been in Vietnam? Yes, you have. I can tell by your face. And then, was it awful? And he goes, Scott Glingster goes, oh, it was kind of hot and wet.
I have Opal. I need something like this for my documentary. I need it. It's America. Those cars smashing into each other and all those mangled corpses.
I'm out. Was having difficulty.
Tom says, how you doing, Sarge? You kill anybody this week?
Opal speaking into a micro recorder as she walks through a school bus parking lot. The buses are empty and look almost menacing, threatening. As so many yellow dragons watching me with their hollow, vacant eyes. I wonder how many little black and white children have yellow nightmares, their own special brand of fear for the yellow peril. Damn it, it's got to be more positive. No, more negative. Start again. Yellow is the color of caution. No. Yellow is the color of cowardice. Yellow is the color of sunshine, and yet I see very little sunshine in the lives of all the little black and white children. I see their lives rather as a study in grayness, a mixture of black and, oh Christ, no, that's fascist. Yellow, 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 yellow fever.
That killed at the showing. Okay, Lady Pearl. JFK took the whole South except for Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, and there's a reason he didn't take Tennessee. He got 481,453 votes, And that asshole got 556,577 votes.
You look like a guy I was in the Navy with. He wouldn't bathe, so we had to pee in his bed to get him discharged.
Okay, Haven. What's the piano player's name? Frog? He plays like a frog. You get your hair cut. You don't belong in Nashville.
That was the last one I had.
I had one more. Ned Beatty is Delbert. He goes, sorry to spring this dinner on you, honey. I asked the man if he'd like to come to dinner, and he said yes. It's like the way he says that is so funny. He said yes. That's it. I'm good.
All right. Let's go to the Stanley rubric then. Legacy is up first. Legacy is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out, so 1980 to today. What is the legacy of this film as shared between the industry and the audience at large? 5 and 5 points for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to lead or would you like to give that to me?
I'll let you do, or go first. I'll let you do it.
Okay. So I think that from a critical perspective, maybe not like it's top of mind for everybody in the industry, but if you start delving into the critics, film school nerds, the cinephiles, I don't think this movie is too far away from either memory or that a lot of people in that critical community have probably seen this, know about it, have promoted it. Obviously, it being on the AFI list, at least one of them, not the other. I do think this has some relevance, but I don't think it's at peak relevancy for the industry. So I'm going to go with a 4.5 there. And I know that you're going to lay into this movie for just not being something that a lot of people in the general audience have seen. But my issue with that and how we've normally structured that is that that's measuring, especially when we did our poll, our straw poll within the office that we normally do on Mondays, and nobody had seen nor heard of this movie, which is not shocking to think, but these are not people that are watching even 30 movies in an average year. So it's kind of hard to use that as a barometer of whether or not this is something, because I'm trying to actually measure on an audience whether at least cinema people have seen this. And for me, that's rounding out at about a 2. So I have this at a 6.5.
Okay. Industry. Yes, critics love this film. And I will give it points because I think it did make Lily Tomlin into a serious actress after her run on Laugh-In as more of a comedic actress. I think it also gave Robert Altman pretty much a long rope by which to hang himself. And quite frankly, part of the problem I have with this is I saw MASH, then I saw Popeye, then I saw Dr. T and the Ladies. And you're going, where was he going with his career? So, I have a little bit, as far as the industry goes, some questions about that and the longevity of him. But it also, there was a lot of names within this film that carried on, that this was their big exposure, including Jeff Goldblum, for that matter. This is where his first film was. So I'm going to go with a 4 for Legacy. The public...
Oh, hold on. A 4 overall for everything?
Or, excuse me, for the industry.
Okay.
That's what I said, for the industry.
Sure, that's what you said.
Yeah, that's what I said. Okay.
No gaslighting here.
Okay. But for the public, I knew of the film. I didn't know much about it. I had gone a long time, 61 years or, old, and had never seen it, even though it was 1975. This would not have been that old for me to have seen, or, back in high school, junior or high, HBO, whatever. Never seen it, barely knew about it. The most I knew about it was from Roger Ebert's Great Movies book, and thought, okay, well, I should probably see it. Had the opportunity now. And I am not a huge cinema nerd as far as every aspect of this, and look for the artsy auteur films. but I do know that I have some general knowledge. I have a hard time with this. So I'm at a 1.5 for the public because I just don't think it's resonated through time. I think it was fine in its moment, but I think the public has lost sight of it, has very little interest in it, and it's kind of just died out and just has a life within a certain sphere. So I am at a 5.5 overall.
Okay. So I think in the 80s, when it felt like the focus kind of shifted a bit to like creating big hits or something profitable, it felt like that was sort of a shift that happened. I think Nashville is still looked back on and considered a seminal moment in the quote unquote golden age of Hollywood movies, like the 70s. So Siskel and Ebert are big heroes of mine. This was one of the only years where they both agreed on the number one film of the year. They picked this one. So critics loved it. I have a book by Pauline Kael. She loved it, and she was an early kind of champion of Altman in general. I think she said she saw an even longer cut, and she loved it, but then they cut it down to 2 hours 40. Anyway, yeah, so I give it 4.5 in terms of industry because I think it really did have that impact with, at least in the memory of people, about what golden classic Hollywood 70s was. And then, of course, the critical response to it was so huge, pretty monumental. So the public, this one kind of hurts me a little bit, but, you know, the movie wasn't a very big hit. I think it's considered a classic in film circles, but it didn't seem to really strike too much of a chord with the general public. And I don't think that I kind of agree with Dana that I don't think people talk much about it, or like, I feel like unless you're like a film person, I don't think this movie has really stuck around in a way. And I will say, as a little bit of a side note, in Nashville in particular, it is interesting because when this movie came out here, Nashville hated it. People hated it. They thought they were being made fun of. They thought like they were trying to make real country songs. Like, these songs are horrible. Minnie Pearl famously spoke out against it. Now it plays well because it's nostalgic. People, you know, it has a different feeling now. It almost feels like people get what he was kind of doing maybe a little bit more, and realizing he wasn't trying to send us up in a mean way. I don't know, but yeah. So that was just a side thing about, but yes, I'm 2.5 in terms of the general public. So I'm a 7 total.
All right. So that is a 6.33 average between the three of us. Let's move to impact and significance. This is a measure of the impact and significance of the movie in the initial 5 years that it came out. We again split this category 5 and 5 points between the industry and the audience for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first this time. For the industry, I think this did, in the short term, create several stars. Shelley Duvall had a nice run after this film. I think Keith Carradine had some significant roles. Lily Tomlin, if I remember right, I think 9 to 5 was done in 1980.
Yeah,
so that's right, within the 5 years. And that kind of really cemented her as somebody who could play that very traditional role of stern, but could be comedic at times, etc. So I think she had a bigger role there. And again, Altman continued to make films and to get Hollywood's backing for that period of time. So I'm actually, again, within the time frame with the critics and everything else and the nominations for the Academy Awards, I'm at a 4.5 for the industry. The public, it had its moment. I mean, it finished, I think, was 27th in the box office, so it wasn't great. But, I mean, it wasn't like it lost money. So I'm going to give it a very middle of the road on that. So I'm at a 2.5 for the public. So I'm at a 7 overall.
I'm going to go a full 5 on the industry side of it, just simply on a basis of It was well talked about. It was almost universally praised by the critics at the time. The Academy at least recognized it in a way that the general public did not. In my feeling of it, again, it didn't lose money, but it at least was not nearly as well received as several other movies, Jaws being the biggest of the year as far as box office draw. But I will mirror your 2.5 on an audience scale, but I have a full 5, so I'm at a 7.5.
Yeah, kind of similar to you guys. I have a 4.5 in terms of industry. I feel like Altman was influential on film. I feel like a lot of filmmakers were almost trying to chase, maybe not his exact style is so very specific, but it was almost like, I feel like it almost invigorated filmmakers maybe to try to be a little bit more original or branch out and do different things. And then, like you said, the Academy recognition was great from that. I mean, I think it was 5 nominations. You said, yeah, like that was, and in that year, which is like famously so tough for Best Picture, it's like so many good movies, or some of the best movies ever. And I agree with you guys about the public. 2.5. Really, all I could think about to go off of this was like the box office performance mainly. And I was looking at the list of the top movies, like you guys did. And I didn't know which number it was, but I saw it wasn't in the top 25. And I was like, ooh, that's rough. But I mean, I understand, like, it's a lot of people don't want to go see a 3-hour movie, especially one that rambles, according to some people. No, it does ramble. But yeah, so I'm just 2.5 on that for the public. Yeah. Oh, 7 total. Yeah.
Okay. So that is a 7.17 average between the three of us. Novelty. This is a category where we have this season started to really delve into splitting this up between both the novelty or the originality of anything having to do with the movie on one side and the execution on the other. So 5 and 5 points again for a total of 10. Who would like to lead here?
I can go. This is where the movie cleans up in points for me. Okay, so for originality, I'm at 4.5. I would say, so the style that Altman was working with here was new. The way he would mic the actors, all the actors, and have them talk and overlap dialogue so that it gets the feeling of real life, of real conversation. And also the way that it's a musical, but not in the traditional way. Like, it's a musical, but all the music's diegetic and it's like performance based. That's just an interesting way to, I don't know if I've seen a musical that's like, or if there had been musicals like that before, where it was just all the performances are stage performances. Like, it's like you're almost watching concerts. So that's interesting. And so I think it's very original. So that's why I did 4.5 for that. Execution is also a 4.5 for me. I think all the performances are excellent. I feel like you're told in very little spurts everything you need to know, or that I feel like you need to know about the characters. I feel like you get to know them well, and it's almost like a magic trick, because it's almost like a quilt. Like, you're just taking little pieces here and there, and then the whole, when you look at the whole thing, you're like, oh yeah, I know those people, I understand them. I feel like he couldn't have done it better in terms of that specific thing he was trying to do, which is to tell the whole, using little bits and pieces everywhere. So yeah, I'm at a total of 9 for novelty.
I would agree with you on the 4.5 for originality. I can't think of too many other films that are very much like this. I think there are some, maybe I alluded to Playtime earlier as kind of like an aesthetic precursor. This does have kind of maybe some French New Wave feel to it, although I don't know if he's necessarily riffing on that. So it kind of is to itself. It doesn't even really take on the same spirit as some of the movies that he had that came before it. So I do think even among his films, it's somewhat original. So I have a 4.5 there as well. My issue is maybe a little bit more in the execution. I do think that there are some slow periods in this movie. You probably could have excised a few characters that I just didn't think were necessary to have in there. And you have so many different stories that it kind of loses the plot for a few. I mean, again, we're assuming that there is some form of a plot, I guess. But the lack of a structure, the lack of a story does make it really difficult for people to follow. And try and convince anybody that you have to watch it twice to really truly appreciate might be really difficult for most people to get into. So from that standpoint, if somebody just watches this once, I think they judge it maybe a little bit more harshly. And thus why I'm going to go for a 3 on the execution portion. So I have a 7.5 instead.
For me, originality. I could not think of any other film like this. I mean, it was completely fresh. I think that's one of the reasons why the critics loved it so, was because it was completely out of the general gist of what other films were. I mean, you kind of have the same traditional plot and follow along the path that's been laid many, many times before. This deviates from that significantly. So I'm at a full 5 for originality. Now, the execution, the biggest problem I had with the execution is and I know Altman probably was trying to do this to some extent, is to create a film which is a Rorschach test. People see different things all the time. And I understand that, but from an execution point of view, you're the director. You're to some extent supposed to convey what you're trying to say with this film. And I think Altman so masked what he was trying to do with it that people read into this things that he never intended to or that were not there. It kind of reminds me of college English class where, the professor stands up there and everything is a Christ figure. And so I have a problem with that. So I can't give it, I like the way it was shot. I like the naturalness of the music and of the conversation. And I like some of the humor and how it was set up so that it showed the folly or the humor in everyday life, even among celebrities. But I can't give it anything higher than a 4 on execution. So I'm at a 9.
I was not expecting to be necessarily the low man there. So that's an 8.5 average between the three of us. Let's move to classicness. This is a really hard category for us to normally define per se, but it usually boils down to, has the movie aged well or not, realistically? Now, we traditionally used to start at a baseline of a 7 because it's easier for films to age poorly than for them to age well. And so adding back points in was always harder, but we've since moved this season to a 6 as a baseline start. Dad, this seems to be your most nuanced category that you usually love, so I will let you start here.
It has a significant contribution in that we mix everyday, average people with celebrities and stars. And they have an interrelationship that exceeds what our normal understanding of celebrity is. This film could be made today and it would have as equal relevancy. The fact that we have the blur between politics and celebrity. The fact that we have so many, today, for example, so many people in Hollywood endorsing candidates and people wanting candidates to endorse them, celebrities to endorse them as candidates, etc. I think to that extent, it's very classic. I understand the scene, the striptease scene, and why Altman wanted that. It was to show the level by which people will denigrate themselves in order to achieve the stardom or success they think they should have. Okay? But I have a problem with the fact that Altman has a tendency to put some sort of gratuitous sex scene in every film he makes. That really you could insinuate it and probably have the same effect without having the blatant nudity and the denigration to the actress in doing it. So I have to go down. So while I'm at a 6, the overall classicness of the film brings it up to about a 9 to me. That's how much I think this film has poignancy yet today. But I'm going to go down a point to an 8 because of the gratuitous sex situation.
All right, so I will just say that I am not a prudish Puritan like my father, so I do have a 9. I think it's ahead of its time on quite a few things about American culture that we've kind of discussed throughout the show. I give it an additional point for timelessness in here. Probably could almost go 2. It's getting to be at 50 years. I would say, yeah, let's just go with the 2 there. And I really don't see anything that's that ill classic or exploitative or anything else that I don't think at least you could make a fair argument is a raw version of showing somewhat of our ugly side of America to ourselves. So my 9.
In retrospect, I like your point, and I will also note that there was an African-American character. Obviously, that character was supposed to be Charlie Pride. He was the African-American country music star of the 70s, who actually was killed by COVID because they gave him his award and said, oh, no, it's safe to come. And then he gets COVID when he's at the Country Music Awards getting his thing and dies.
Crazy.
So I will go back. I will go to an 8.5.
Yeah, that point you just touched on was kind of let me go at it this way. I think it's aged really well. I think the things you can take points off for it are some of the more like superficial ways in which it's dated, but like that's not a big deal. Like, the, I guess, technology, the reel to reel stuff, that doesn't matter. But the thing about the race stuff in the movie, I think, I'm not saying it's inaccurate or not true to its time, but it does make you cringe and wince, and it's kind of rough. Like, I'm thinking of one particular line that Haven Hamilton has when he walks by him that I thought was just really messed up. And I was like, we get the point. I think even without that, we don't need, like, it's just that stuff kind of makes it. And I was going to say, even like I said, even the politics don't feel that dated particularly. I mean, they're talking about taxing the rich in this movie, like things like that. It's just, yeah, I think with all that, and then maybe
lawyers.
Yeah, they're talking about lawyers. Counting off a little bit for the race stuff, which I kind of do because of the way it's done. I also take Dana's point about Altman does like to present nudity sometimes in a way. Like, I was thinking about Shortcuts when you said that, because there's a scene where they have a fight and Julianne Moore is just bottomless and they're having an argument and there's no real reason for it. It's just kind of there. And you're like, yeah, he does have a tendency, I think, to do stuff like that almost as for shock value or something. So I'm going to go with 8.5 for classicness.
All right, so we have an 8.67 between the three of us here. Finally, let's go to rewatchability. We usually allow anybody to have their own subjective test of this, since this is our guest's favorite movie. Before we potentially knock it down a peg, let's let him lead with his likely high score.
Okay. I'm a 4.5 on how likely I am to put it on, just because obviously I've watched it several times. I've seen it. I make a point to see it whenever it's here in the theater, just because that experience of watching it in a theater, and usually it's sold out. It's always a lot of people here to watch it. I don't know. There's something about it that's addicting, or like, it just feels like everybody's kind of on the same wavelength of the movie, which may not be the case. Some people may not be into it, but people seem to be. I mean, it's getting big laughs and people seem pretty affected by it. So I don't see, but the thing about it is, I'm going to say 4.5 because I did even put it on myself to watch the director's commentary. So that means I must be pretty into watching it. The number for if I leave it on when I stumble across it is going to be a 4. The reason for this is because I can see myself getting sucked very easily into this movie. Like I can kind of jump into it and get going with the flow of it. But because of the length of it, I take it down a little bit point wise, because it would have to be a day when I don't have much going on. It wouldn't be easy to just jump in and watch the rest of it. You just have to have a clear schedule. So yeah. So let's see, 4.54. That's I'm sorry. 8.5.
Go ahead, Dad.
All right. This one, when we finish watching the films, I wait to do my actual scoring and everything until the afternoon before, because I like to just let things kind of ruminate in my in my mind and in my heart and kind of come up with things. I am all over the fucking board on this on rewatchability. Part of me wants to really watch it again and see if I get something out of it. When you're talking about it being in the theater, I find that being in a collective like that, where it's a shared experience, has a different feel than watching it on your own. Very much so. And half of me goes, if this were to show in a theater, would I really enjoy this more being with a group of people who are all reacting and feeding off the energy that's conveyed through their enjoyment or shock or humoristic vision of the film?
It's definitely how I feel about Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah, I'm all over the board on this. So my normal one is would I watch it again is a 6. Because part of me says that in about 6 to 12 months, I should rewatch this and reevaluate it. I'm going to go to a 7. I have really struggled with this because part of me just goes, why would I want to rewatch a film where it's a musical with no one who can sing? But I'll give it another shot. There have been enough Altman films that I've enjoyed, even though there's also some Altman films that I go like, what was he thinking? So I'll go with the 7.
I feel like you're going to love it the next time you watch it. You're like right on the edge.
And in fact, the number I just gave is different than the number I wrote down at 5:30 this afternoon.
That's awesome.
Okay. So I have been subjecting myself to trying to be the objective voice. And this is where I incorporate the more broad swath of potential people watching movies. Since we have out and out said throughout this program that it is not a first watch movie, I think it's going to be really hard to sell people on a first watch, let alone a second watch, unless you have a specific purpose going into it and like really want to understand and appreciate it like seemingly so many other critics and cinephiles seem to do. And so from that standpoint, the runtime is going to work against you. The lack of a plot, when I think most ordinary people are going to want plot and conflict and character development. And this movie at first glance really struggles, if not outright doesn't have those. Like I think of my grandma sitting and watching this with us the other night, or my grandfather who watched about the first half and I saw him nod off 3 times in the early portion of this film.
That's not that difficult. He nods off at any time between 7 and when he goes to bed at 8.
But along those same lines, I just wonder how many people I could sell on rewatching this that have seen it the first time and are just like, I don't understand what the hell I was watching.
No, it plants the seed, though. It plants a seed because you have Dana, for example, who ended the movie going, I don't think I like that. And then as the days go on, it just grows in your head and it makes you think maybe you should rewatch it to see what's going on. I think that's
a little hopeful.
Okay.
To be quite honest. Like, again, I dreaded putting this on and doing this. I knew we had to discuss it because it is a big movie to discuss over the course of the list and how we've done our show. But by the same token, I just, from 4 years ago, I'm like, that's not a movie that I feel I need to rewatch anytime soon. Now, I feel a little bit different about it now coming back to it the second time, but my need to watch it again was not necessarily there. Now, would I maybe get more out of it on a third watch? Sure. Do I think I've at least accomplished enough where I can understand why people in a way appreciate the movie? I think I've gotten to that place. But on an objective level, for the average person, I think a 3 is actually warranted here. So unfortunately, that drops the rewatchability score to a 6.17. Now, moving to audience score on this one, we had a 72% for Google users and an 83% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us a 7.75. So to repeat the categories, we had a 6.33 for Legacy, a 7.17 for Impact and Significance, an 8.5 for Novelty, an 8.67 for Classicness, a 6.17 for Rewatchability, and a 7.75 for audience score, giving us a final total of 44.59, and currently placing it on our list between Rope and Gone Girl for number 152.
It's a little higher than I thought it was going to be. But somewhere in the grave, Robert Altman is scoffing at us, not understanding his work.
Now, to be fair, I think let me look up, because we discussed MASH earlier this year. I just want to see where this is at, if I can find it on our.
And I love
list.
Altman, by the way, while you're looking. I was going to say, I love Altman, but MASH is actually one that never really has clicked with me. And I've tried it a couple times. So it's like, it's very hit or miss. Yeah, it's.
I went and saw Popeye in the theaters, and.
All right. To be fair, MASH is currently 201st, going to be 202nd on the list. And this is going to be 152. So it is substantially higher on the list than the other Altman movie so far that we've covered.
But has there ever been a more perfect casting, Dana, than Shelley Duvall as Olive Oil?
Well, I understand the
Spot
casting.
on,
Robin
right?
Williams
Spot
is
on.
the only one who could have played Popeye.
Yeah, they just did a good job with the casting. The rest of the movie is questionable, but they did a good job with the casting.
It's just that the script was terrible. It made no sense. It wasn't funny. And I'm like, what's the purpose of this? As we're talking about the revisionist almanac, we're doing 1982 because that was the year I graduated high school. And being from a small Midwestern city, you had three choices of what to do on a Friday or Saturday night. You went to the movies, the football or basketball game at the high school, or you went and found some party someplace to go to. Okay. I was never a big party guy. So I went to a lot of movies. And in fact, I have 42 movies for 1982. I saw 21 of them in theater.
Cool. Nice. Does Altman have an 82 movie? I want to say maybe he does. Is Come Back to the Five and Dime Jimmy Dean an 82 movie?
I don't think that's on the list.
Okay. It might not be 82. I know it's around there, but it may not be. But anyway, sorry, tangent.
You're all good. So as usual, if you have any complaints about our movie or our scoring, have anything to congratulate us over, think we got this totally wrong, any commentary at all, you can write us at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on any of the socials at Gmote Podcast, or you can find us at our website, RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmote Podcast. So it's saying in his filmography, Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean was from 1982.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be probably in any of the Academy categories, but it's based on a play. It feels very much like a play. Has a great cast. It's like Karen Black, Cher, Sandy Dennis, Kathy Bates is in it. It's good. I mean, it's good if you like Altman. But you know, it's kind of one of those movies where if you're not an Altman fan, I don't know if you'll love it.
I will say this most recent version of watching this, and our more, I guess, within the last 6 months, watching of Magnolia, has maybe started to unlock another director for me that's always felt inaccessible in PTA.
Absolutely.
Because he has said he models himself, his role model is Altman.
Magnolia is his Nashville, he said. Yeah.
Magnolia very much feels like his Nashville in LA.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little bit more developed with some of the character arcs. Like they have specific character arcs, and so it's not nearly as ordinary to a lot of the characters, and it's obviously we don't have quite as many people to follow, but yes, you could definitely see the parallels between the two.
But I will say part of the reason why Altman had 24 characters in this, he didn't want development because some of the key characters were supposed to be superficial. There wasn't any depth to them. That's just who they were.
What's funny is, have either of you seen Shortcuts?
No.
So that came out in 93, and it basically, he did Nashville again in LA. It's 24 characters, but it's a little longer, and it's more dramatic than Nashville. It's not as funny. And that I think does do a better job at fleshing out the characters, maybe, like where it's a little bit, I think it's the fact that it's not trying to be funny that maybe helps it a little bit. But like, I'd be curious to know what y'all think of Shortcuts. I think it's great, but
okay.
Again, it's a lot like, it's like his Nashville moved to LA in the 90s. So,
all right,
great
we can book you on the 2033 episode of Shortcuts.
Okay. All right. Please pencil me in, please.
I'll be like, let's see, that's how many years from now? So
8? So you'll be 69.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. I won't be that old.
I'm going to be your Altman / Polanski guy. I'll come on for any
Wow. The only thing worse than that is maybe the Woody Allen guy that we made.
Another director I love. Anyway, let's move on.
Yes. So, yes, our expert on Roman Polanski, Woody Allen, and Jeffrey Epstein.
The problematic.
That reminds me, we have to pull the Band-Aid off on that one, Dad. I haven't started doing any scheduling yet for the season after next, but Annie Hall's anniversary does come up.
I know. I do have a friend whose favorite film is Annie Hall.
I get it.
I could ask him if he wants to do it.
What? So it devolves into what is a Kennedy Democrat discussion?
Yeah, I have a friend who's one of these people that, as long as we talk about anything other than politics, we get along just great.
Yeah.
But he takes such a right turn that it just goes, wow, I can't even go there.
Yeah, you just have to leave that off the table completely.
Yeah, but anyway.
All right, getting back to the film just for a brief second here. I don't have any remaining questions for this one. I don't think that's the point of the film, is to necessarily ask questions so much as just to kind of sit with the vibes of the film, as opposed to anything like nitpicky or really questioning, because that just to me does not feel like what this movie is or is trying to do. So I will leave it. If you guys have remaining questions, please, by all means, but I don't have any.
Stuff that can't be answered, like, does Barbara Jean live? Seems unlikely she will, but you never know.
I suppose, but I don't know. The way she's like flailed out like that, it just, and the fact that they're trying to transport her instead of like doing a triage just doesn't bode well.
And Barnett has a line you can hear where he's like, I can't stop the blood. So it doesn't sound great for her, but we already talked about why did Kenny shoot her? There's theories about that. Yeah. I don't know. They're all brought about by the end, though. You're left with some questions after the end, for sure.
It just seems that the film exemplifies just the sheer muddled mess of culture, politics, entertainment, etc., and how we had strains from the Vietnam War still living on. At the same time, we had Watergate and the disillusionment of politics, and the fact they talk continuously about the Kennedy assassination in there, which still weighed heavily on a large portion of the public into the 70s. And we looked for whatever we could find for stabilization, which led to the Reagan Revolution in the 80s, which really I have my own thoughts on as far as political and economic viability over the long term. But
if you can change and I can change, we all can change.
Yeah. Thank you, Rocky. Anyway, it's a very tumultuous period of life and of things where so many things were going on at the same time. And it's all the baby boomers who were the hippies at Woodstock, who then ended up by 1980 being the guys wearing the 3-piece suits on Wall Street, being the exemplification of what they dreaded as teenagers. So if you take it in that context, that's one of the things I was thinking about is Altman really criticizing the fact that we have so many conflicting sociological tenets, lines that are like crossing and not understanding where they're going. Or it could just be that Altman's a cranky old guy who's sitting around in a director's chair directing things because he thinks it's funny.
Well, he does say in the commentary that he intended for the movie to be seen as just a microcosm of Hollywood, the Hollywood system in a way, which is, the way it uses up people, spits them out, the way people are dying to get in, banging down the doors. So that's interesting. And then the thing about the Kennedy thing that was interesting is he says that actress, Barbara Baxley, was just a huge Kennedy fan. And so he just let her go and filmed it. He was like, just talk about that. And that ended up in the movie. So it's kind of crazy.
Man, after all, I got Tom's grandfather to watch the film because I said, well, Robert Altman directed Bonanza for a while.
Very similar. I love it.
This has been Anthropology Lessons with Dana.
Did you tell him about Robert Altman's other Western, which is nothing like any Western ever, McCabe and Mrs. Miller?
I try to
He's not seen that one. I guarantee you. I haven't seen it yet.
I try to avoid too many political conversations with my father-in-law.
Just don't watch McCabe and Mrs. Miller thinking it's a Western. Don't watch it with that frame of mind. You'll do okay.
He directed McCabe and Mrs. Miller. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I have seen that film. I did not realize that was him, but it's been, oh man, I'll bet you it's been 40 years since I've seen it.
That would sound about right, yeah. Okay, so unless there are other remaining questions, I do want to thank our guest for being back with us yet again. Scott, thank you very much. We appreciated having you, just like last year. Currently, you are not scheduled to be back with us yet this year, but again, remind everybody what you're working on and where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I know it's when you put a movie stan on the thing, it skews the numbers a bit, so I appreciate you letting me do it. Yeah, so Twitter, I'm at Cole, Scott, all spelled out. That's actually Instagram too, and actually Blue Sky. Well, no, we're not going to talk about Blue Sky. Twitter and Instagram. And then I write sometimes for the Movie Friends podcast, my friend Seth's podcast. I've written reviews for their website before. Need to do more of it. Need to get back into it. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter tweeting about movies, tennis, or.
And as always, we have all of our guest links and various different attributes available both in the show notes this week as well as on the website, so you can find them there. All right, remaining thoughts for the week, Dad.
I've been trying to get through this season of Hacks. I'm enjoying it.
I think it ends at a very good place. I know you haven't gotten there yet, but I would say it's kind of unusual that it's obeying the normal HBO trope of the second to last episode is actually the most important, which is odd, but
okay. And I know that my friend Leo, who I see on Thursdays, raved about The Pit.
Mm-hmm.
Subsequently, I noted you started putting it on. I've watched a few episodes. It is really, really good and very compelling to continue watching. I've missed some parts that you've watched before or, in the middle of that I didn't get in. It's a show that I think I'm probably going to have to go back to. I think if I sat and put it on with your mother, she would actually be quite enthralled by it. It just seems like something that she would find entertaining. So I think that's something when she gets back from her vacation that I will put on for her. And I am looking forward to the Phoenician scheme.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll eventually be someplace where I can see it.
Yeah, you're in kind of a movie desert.
Yeah. I mean, if it had a car explosion, I'd have it here.
Well, to be fair, you have access to more things than just about anybody. So I wouldn't say that you're going to have difficulty seeing it. It's whether or not you can see it in the theater is the difference.
Well, it's just between certain services I have and streaming platforms and such that I pay for because I have the illusion of being an insider in the industry. So yes, I understand. So, and actually, I have not seen Sinners, but I think it's going to be a potential sometime in the very near future of watching it on VOD.
It's great. I love Sinners.
I will say, I'm still not energized to actually see it because I'm still thinking it's a semi-horror vampire movie, and that just did not sound that compelling to me. I will watch it because everybody has told me I need to watch it, but I'm going into it with very low expectations, unlike most people who are like, oh, it really lives up to the hype, because I just don't think this is going to be my thing. I'm ready to be pleasantly surprised, but that's where I'm entering this movie. I still haven't seen it yet. I will get to it. It's just a matter of timing, especially with the amount of projects and random things that I have going on right now yet, even with summer classes, which seem to be almost more onerous during the summer somehow than the regular classes that I have. But we'll yeah.
Welcome to law school.
Yeah, I know. Somehow they overload you even in the summer, but regardless, I will say I agree on The Pit. It is compelling. It is very intense. It does not have any letdown moments as far as like there is no boredom. You're constantly pinging back and forth between various different things, but it's got great peaks of emotion and great dives of emotion. So it wraps a lot of things. I do not do well with a lot of the medical gore portion of things, and there are moments where I will cringe at, they open up somebody's chest, and I'm recoiling, but it's still a very compelling show. The characters are very rich in it, so I would also recommend that as well. So with that will do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. Crying helps me slow down and obsess over the weight of life's problems. Next week, for our 266th episode, we welcome back film critic Michael Willoughby to discuss another Pixar classic with Inside Out from 2015, celebrating its 10th anniversary. Written and directed by Pete Docter, with Meg LaFauve and Josh Cooley, cinematography by Patrick Lynn and Kim White, music by Michael Giacchino, starring Amy Poehler, Phyllis Smith, Richard Kind, Bill Hader, Lewis Black, and Minnie Kaling. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, TikTok, or Blue Sky at the handle @GModePodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our technical provider is Riverside FM. Our distributor is Captivate FM.